What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back. And as always, thank you for joining me. My name's Paul Brettel. And today we're here to break down my key observations and takeaways from the Packers' first joint practice with the New England Patriots. But before we dive in, hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. You can follow me over on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. You can find all my work over at Packers Wire. So now let's dive on in, and we'll start with, again, the injury report, as we always do. There were two new additions to the injury report. Devondre Campbell was out with an ankle injury, and wide receiver Bo Melton was out with a quad injury. David Bakhtiari did not practice again, although before practice, Matt LaFleur said that they're hopeful that he'll be able to go on Thursday. So we'll see if that's the case or not. And then still out was Caleb Jones, Kenny Clark, Innis Gaines, Corey Ballantyne, Tyler Goodson, Lou Nichols, Tariq Carpenter, Lou Nichols, and of course, Eric Stokes, who's on the PUP list, and Tyler Davis, who his season is over as he suffered a torn ACL. In regards to Caleb Jones, the Packers had 5 players in for workouts on Tuesday. 3 of them were offensive tackles. They didn't sign any of those players, at least nothing that's been reported at this time. So my hope is that means that Caleb Jones is not going to be sidelined for too long and that it's not a long-term injury, but something to keep our eyes on. All right, let's start with the big one. Jordan Love's performance. I thought that it was very, very promising, and more so than any particular throw. And there were definitely some impressive throws. But what was promising for me was that it was who he did it against and what the Patriots defense was doing. That was the most promising part. In terms of his execution and what we saw in a vacuum play to play, are all things that he's done uh, throughout training camp, especially as of late. Perhaps it was, or there was some more consistency to it, but it was Love taking care of the football. He was taking what the defense gave him, going through his progressions, and if he had to take the check down, he had to take the check down. He wasn't forcing anything. We saw Love taking advantage of the middle of the field quite often, as well as the flats. Again, things that we've seen him do. The New England defense did a good job of taking away the deep throw. He went through his progressions, but again, what really was impressive was who he did it against. This was a Patriots defense that threw a ton of blitzes at him, that had a lot of coverage disguises, late movement. So at one moment, Love's looking at the defense, they're in cover 2, and then just before he snaps the ball, they shift, and now all of a sudden they're in cover 1, which of course changes everything about the play and how Love's supposed to attack it. The Patriots also used a lot of different personnel, mixing and matching as well. And the reason that having success against uh, that type of defense doing those type of things is because those are tactics that a lot of defenses are going to use to create confusion. It's a way to cause some chaos for a young quarterback, for a young offense. So especially early on in the season, until Jordan Love in the offense puts on tape that, hey, we can't handle these things. I expect a lot of the defenses that the Packers face to do all those things, to disguise coverages, to mix and match personnel, to really blitz the heck out of this Packers offense. But he handled it well. Matt LaFleur talks about the process. And if the process is done correctly, the results will follow. So even in the midst of all that chaos and confusion, Love stuck to the process. He wasn't rushing his throws. As I mentioned, he went through his progressions. He didn't try to force anything. All of those things that New England was throwing at him didn't lead to any, big mistakes, big errors, which ultimately is the goal by doing that. And Green Bay was also able to generate some big plays as well. On a crossing route, Love hit Jaden Reed over the middle for yards after the catch opportunity. Then down in the red zone, he found Luke Musgrave on a seam route for a touchdown. And then the big play of the day was a post route by Christian Watson. Romeo Doubs was running a crosser underneath. They were both going in the same direction. And Love said afterwards that he looked at Doubs first, and that created just a slight hesitation by the safety. Christian Watson was able to then get behind him in the cornerback. Beautiful pass from Jordan Love, and it would have been a 75-yard touchdown. So all in all, I thought it was a very, very promising day from Jordan Love. Again, in a vacuum, the things that he did on a play-to-play basis were all things that we've seen, but the fact that he did it against that defense who was throwing those different tactics at him and was still able to perform at a pretty good level, again, I thought was the most promising. Also very promising, Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. These two gave the New England defense, the secondary in particular, of course, fits all day long. And the prime example of this is the 2-minute drill. So the Packers started at their own 25-yard line. There was a minute 30 left on the clock in this scenario. Jordan Love led them all the way down to about roughly their own 25-yard line with about uh, 4 or 5 seconds left, and Anders Carlson would come out and kick a field goal. More on that in a second. But from getting from their own 25 to the opponent's 25, it was only Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. Those were the only guys catching passes. New England knew the ball was going there, and they still couldn't stop them. Just a very impressive day for the Packers' young receivers. Also impressive day, Packers edge rushers, Packers interior defensive linemen absolutely dominated the day. Whether it's the first unit, second unit, third unit, these position groups were just living in the backfield. Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi, the New England quarterbacks, they were dealing with collapsing pockets or pressure all day. I saw one of the Patriots reporters who was at practice tweet out that he counted 13 would-be sacks during that joint practice. They were just doing a terrific job. At the edge rusher position, it was basically everyone on the roster, even on the back end. Brenton Cox, Keyshawn Banks were, making noise in the backfield. I thought JJ Enagbare, he was one of my players of the day. I thought he did a terrific job, not only as a pass rusher, but did well against the run. Aaron Mosby had a terrific bull rush where he just knocked the offensive tackle on his butt. And then another play, New England tried to run an end around, and Mosby did a terrific job of staying home and was there to meet the ball carrier before he could turn upfield. So just a terrific day from the edge rusher group. On the interior defensive line, I mean, this is turning into the, weekly or daily, Carl Brooks appreciation show, because he had another really good performance during the 2-minute drill when the New England offense was going through it. He had 2 pressures on that one drive alone. Just a really job well done. Devontae Wyatt was getting into the backfield. Jonathan Ford made some great push in the run game. So the Packers' defensive front just had a terrific showing. And in part, it was because of the play of the secondary. They were getting into the backfield quickly, but there were times where there were some coverage sacks. Zappi and Mac Jones, they did not have a lot of places to go with the ball, which, again, some pressure was generated because of that. The second team cornerback group featured William Hooper, Keandre Thomas, and then Shamar John Charles in the slot. We did see Jair Alexander back participating in team drills. He wasn't competing in all of them, but he was playing in a portion of them, which is more than what he has been doing. So overall, just a really impressive day from the defense. But again, the play of the defensive front I thought was just fantastic. With Devondre Campbell out, Isaiah McDuffie was in at linebacker starting next to Quay Walker, and he had a really good day, specifically against the run. On one play, he was able to get outside to stop the ball carrier from being able to turn upfield. And then on another, he filled the gap really well at the line of scrimmage to limit the play to no yards or a yard. But again, McDuffie played really well. Looks really fast out there. In pass protection, I thought the offensive line held up really well. The starters were the usual group with Bakhtiari out as Yash Nyman at left tackle, followed by Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers, John Runyon, and Zach Tom. In the run game, however, mixed results. And that's kind of been the theme here in training camp so far. Running between the tackles for Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, it was tough sledding more times than not. So something to continue to keep our eyes on. But I thought the offensive line did well in pass protection, giving Love the time that he needed. At safety, we saw a number of different combinations of players being utilized, but it looks like it's now Tavarius Moore's turn to be the starter. For about roughly the first 2 weeks of training camp, it was Rudy Ford. The last 2 weeks, it's been Jonathan Ford next to Darnell Savage. And now yesterday, we saw Tavarius Moore out there. So it looks like perhaps it could be his turn to finish out training camp before the Packers make their decision on who's going to be starting next to Savage. He played a really good game in Cincinnati. Matt LaFleur talked about his physicality in that game being on display, both on special teams, but at safety as well, especially with his ability as a tackler. LaFleur said that he was often the second guy rallying to the ball to help take the ball carrier down. And looking back on Moore's time in San Francisco, that's really where he shined. He was a core special teams contributor and someone who was a capable tackler and willing run defender. That's what the Packers are going to get in him. So it does look like it's now his turn to showcase what he can do at the safety position. I think I've talked about on here how I think right now, running back 3, it's Patrick Taylor. And we saw again why on Wednesday, specifically during the 2-minute drill with the second team offense. There were 2 really, really good blitz pickups by Taylor, one of which gave Clifford the additional time that he needed to connect with Malik Heath down the right sideline for a big play. Matt LaFleur's talked about it. Brian Gutekunst has talked about it. They're giving us the answers to the test. What are they looking for? Someone who can block, someone who can play special teams. That's Patrick Taylor. I know he doesn't have the same upside on offense as Lou Nichols or Tyler Goodson. Both of whom were, again, I mentioned earlier, still out with an injury, but they're giving us the answers to the test. They're telling us what they're looking for, and that's Patrick Taylor to a T. It's why he was the third running back for most of last season. But again, really, really good job on blitz pickup by Taylor on those plays. Did see Emmanuel Wilson getting more involved in the passing game, which is good to see. But again, how does he handle special teams? How does he handle as a blocker are going to be the deciding factors in this battle. Speaking of Malik Heath, I just mentioned the big play he made down the right sideline. He had maybe half a step on the cornerback. It was pretty good coverage. A really, really good thrown ball by Sean Clifford to drop it in there, but a nice job by Heath to make the contested grab. It's getting really difficult to talk about a 53-man roster that does not include Malik Heath on it. He just continues to make plays. Also of note, saw him on the special teams unit as one of the flyers on the punt coverage team. So again, he played just one special team snap in Cincinnati. I imagine that similarly to running back, when we're talking about the 6 receiver role, there's going to be other factors involved other than just how do you perform as a pass catcher. What do you do as a blocker? And we saw Heath in that same Bengals game, having that downfield block that, as LaFleur said, got the coaching staff really excited. But we're going to hopefully see him more on special teams here. So that's one of the big things I'm going to be watching for in the New England game, because does he play more than one snap? Because, again, I imagine that's going to be a part of the equation in deciding who wide receiver 6 is. But from an offensive standpoint, it's getting really, really tough to keep him off. With Melton sidelined right now, Doubs had a little bit of a quieter day compared to the previous 2 practices that he had. But Malik Heath, he just continues to make plays. Anders Carlson. So he started the day 5 for 5. There's the good news. First field goal he made was an extra point from 33, and then the next 4 kicks he made were all between 40 and 50 yards. However, during the 2-minute drill, he would go 0 for 2. As I mentioned earlier, Jordan Love took the offense down to between the 20-25 yard line. It was roughly a 40-41 yarder that Carlson had. There was 3 seconds left on the clock. Missed it right, which has been the theme for him. And then on the second time through, the second team offense led by Sean Clifford, they didn't have any timeouts left. So, the play stops, or the Packer player gets tackled, the clock's at 12, 11, 10 seconds. It's ticking down. The field goal unit has to rush onto the field. So there's definitely, things are sped up at that point. And Carlson kicks what is just one of the weirdest field goal attempt I've probably ever seen. I don't even know how to describe what happened to the ball. It hit a wall of wind. It literally just almost stopped in midair, and he ended up short and left from, again, about the same distance as before, 40-41 yards. Just a really, really weird kick. Guessing there was probably some contact issue on his part, but it was like a wall of wind was up there and just stopped it. So not sure what to make of that. But again, we see the ups and downs that come with the rookie kicker. And I was asked about, do I think the Packers are going to bring someone in? I don't. I know they have competition. They've even brought kickers in over the years to compete with Mason Crosby, or at least to be in camp with Mason Crosby. But Brian Gutekunst said they want Carlson to get all the reps he can. In the finite amount of time that they have to practice, Carlson is usually kicking just 6 field goals. He does 2 sets of 3. And over the course of practices, if that's just becomes 3 attempts, that's a lot of kicks and opportunities that he's missing out on in that practice environment. They are preaching patience and they are very much prepared to weather the storm. And that's exactly what I think they're going to do. Sticking with special teams, confirming what we already know, Daniel Whelan, he packs a lot of power as a punter. Again, if that's all the Packers are evaluating him on, well, he's definitely got the edge over Pat O'Donnell. But as this time goes on, I do think that I'm not going to be surprised if Whelan makes the team. The Packers definitely are going with that more youth movement. We know that. And again, I mentioned it at safety the other day, talking about Anthony Johnson and Dallin Levitt. You could apply the same thing to punter in terms of, seeing what the young developmental player can do on your roster, knowing there's going to be ups and downs, versus the veteran who's here on a 1-year deal. The Packers are trying to figure out this year. Of course, they still want to win games, but one of the big things that they want to answer is who's our core guys? Who can we build around moving forward? And perhaps they take a similar approach at punter. A few more notes from the Packers starting offense. We saw a ton of pre-snap motion. Green Bay still used that fairly regularly last season. I believe they ranked 10th or 11th in the NFL in total motion or percentage of motion on snaps, even with Aaron Rodgers, as we know, not being a big fan of it. But it's going to go up this year. Early on in the team drills against the Patriots offense, it was constant. Every play, there was motion from this Packers offense. So it's going to be a big part of it. Also saw a heavy rotation with the skill position players. And in part, that's to get players the number of snaps that they need in practice. But the versatility that the Packers have at tight end and at receiver, it really feels like there's a limitless combination of personnel packages that they could use. And that really plays into the Matt LaFleur style of offense, achieving that illusion of complexity where you can run a variety of plays from just a few personnel packages, which is going to help create mismatches that can then be exploited. So it was just really cool to see the wide variety of combinations that they were putting out there on offense. Lastly, players of the day: Jordan Love, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Carl Brooks, and JJ Enagbare. And one other thing before we go, we saw Luke Musgrave get a touch on an end around, a tight end getting a touch on an end around. Unfortunately, he was only able to, turn it upfield a little bit for a few yard gain, but just not something you expect to see. I think it was during one of last week's practices, Matt LaFleur mentioned that, they track the guys, on the field. And in terms of miles per hour, Luke Musgrave during one of the practices was actually the fastest guy on the field that day. So, of course, unusual to see a tight end used in that capacity. But when you have that speed, you have that size, that's definitely a different look you're throwing at defenses. And he obviously has the skill set and the ability to, potentially turn that into a big play. So something fun, something exciting to see. So there you have it, my friends. Those are my big observations, key takeaways from Packers' first joint practice with New England. They're going to be back on the field on Thursday for another joint practice with the Patriots. As always, hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate it. You can follow me over on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. You can find all my work at Packers Wire. So until next time, friends, take care, stay safe, and as always, go Packers.